relationships that have been built for years, and not for any purpose, other than just being friends. But now it's a chance to really kind of like support, what I'm doing and that type of thing. So it's just dealing with that, and I have a lot of there's a lot of events here. You know what I'm saying? I have a lot of events here, meaning that like like now that I'm in this community and I turn basically the space, that we're in, like, like in like a yeshiva in essence, but it's not just a yeshiva, it's like also like the ideas like safe house where we have like events and this and so it's always so like it's a lot of people who I live like in what you call a very hippie community. The whole time I was in a very religious, paradey community, and I'll say this community is what they call more hippie because there's more partying and things like that. And so like sometimes when I give classes over here, a lot of the people in this community grew up religious, but then had their problems and went off, and they kind of like come to this place to kind of like seek refuge, type of a thing, right? So a lot of the people in the community, now that I'm here, gravitating, like I even have high school kids coming over here, you know what I mean? Like, because like they feel, I think maybe safe with the idea of an African American rabbi. I think they feel like it's like something that someone who can maybe understand them and relate, that type of thing. So whatever, like there's a lot going on. So like people come, there's a lot of the people they drink. You know what I'm saying? They drink beers, they party. So like there's pictures, videos, whatever. Me like in the yeshiva, and it's like but that's a normal thing in yeshiva, like beers is. But some people like were trying to like hate on it and that type of thing. But the reality is, this is the culture of the community, and the same thing in the yeshiva guys. You see the guys even go harder with the parties. It's just no girls there. You know what I'm saying? But they go harder. Like, I mean, they're like going like not like insane. Like probably some of the best parties I've ever been to were all guys and all yeshiva guys. Because we're just like learners and we're just like having fun and singing and dancing and thinking about Hashem, these types of things. So it's not like a big deal, but for some people, everyone's looking for so everyone dressed that like kind of like publicly a little bit. So yeah, so that's a big part is really establishing the social media component of the yeshiva, and that's going to be a very big real estate piece because when I say real estate, like the yeshiva is really it's more of a think tank from the perspective of you know our goal is to solve the world's problems with Torah, meaning that the different issues that exist in the world, we want to sit back, our group of sages, hence Yeshiva Sanhedrin, and we want to sit back and we want to think about, you know, whether it's hunger, whether it's diseases, whatever it is, how do we fix these things from a Torah, IP Kabbalistic perspective? Like, what type of partnerships do we need to create? What type of alliances? Because our focus is removing pain and suffering in our lifetime, right? That's the focus. We want to remove pain and suffering from all of humanity in this lifetime. And so we created an organization, an institution that's focused strictly on removing pain and suffering from all of humanity. And our first initiative to address that is the teaching of the neshama and the mechanism of the neshama and how the neshama works with reality. Because without that knowledge, there's no conversation removing pain and suffering. Right? And so we've had the merit to find this amazing Sefer, Hilak Pirki Chokmah, Brother Ramchal, who, for me, in my spiritual journey, Rob Ashlag and different people were very, were everything. But there's something about the clarity that the Ramchal is giving us in the Sefer that is allowing me to have such clarity that I could explain up to chapter 24 at least, right? On how things work. And this Sefer is foundational for our institution. And it's foundational because one is something that Hashem sent specifically to us. And two, the focus of the Sefer, in Ramchal's words, is to correct a lot of the things that people misunderstood about the RE. right? So Bekitzer, that 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 that's where we're at, right? And so that's why, it's very important for us specifically to learn these the safer together, because along with other things, I mean, obviously we've learned many safers in the shiva so far since we started learning. Um, but there's certain safers that the people who are or people who teach or give sheer in the yeshiva, they have to be clear on this. Because the way the Ramchal is expressing this answers all the questions, right? Because I mean, honestly, like I mean, go and ask somebody, what does it mean, Simpson? Like really, like you know what they'll say? You know what they'll say? I'm telling you, test it out. Talk to somebody who in the Kabbalah. I'm talking about people who learn Kabbalah. Like ask them to explain to you the Simpson. You know what they're going to say? They're going to say God had this desire to share in this, and then the other person, which is also explained by the Ari, right? And Rav Ashlag. So I'm not taking away from that. But what I'm saying is that the Ramchal makes it very clear because he gives us a clear understanding of the Ein Sof, the endless aspect that we cannot grasp for our logic, and then also the tangible aspects that we can grasp in the understanding of the spirit of the whole system. And why the Ramchal, when he speaks about the Samsun, he basically says, like if you could imagine a piece of like a cake, a full cake, and you take a knife and you cut a piece out of that piece out of the cake as it relates to the sphere, as it relates to the Ein Sof, the cake itself is the endless world, right? Full of all different types of things inside of it, infinite things inside of it, right? But that piece, the cutting of that piece is the constriction. And that cutting of the piece is the world that we live in. Those are the spheral that he explained earlier in the Sefer, right? Because he said the endless world is endless, but he said there's certain parsufim in the endless world that are connected to this reality. That's what we experience. But what we experience in this reality is only a small aspect of the endless totality of the Ein Sof, right? And so that's a big idea because that's clear. The Ein Sof, there's an aspect of the Ein Sof that became autonomous, which allowed the creator to kind of like, it's like how do we understand? Because we're not talking about God, right? We're talking about the creative system, right? The Ein Sof is a creative system. So he's saying that the aspect of the Simpson is this aspect of that creative system called the Ein Sof, creating a subdivision of itself. And so he's using the language of that Hashem could be outside of himself in a way. That makes sense. But I mean, because Hashem's everything. So what are we saying? So that's why the way he's explaining it is very key because really high level people get stuck in these areas. You know what I mean? Like really get stuck in these in terms of communication. I've seen it. I've had the same narrative up until this time, and you listen to it, it's like, wait, no. The realm call, this is a whole different thing. Hold on. Sorry, do I need Nita? So we should just go into it since. Okay. All right. Yeah. So that's where we're at, right? And we want to be very clear because this is our life. The clearer we are on how the light force of the Creator manifests in His world, this brings our entire spiritual life to life. Now it's so clear. Like this whole thing, it's like it's crazy. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, so this do we didn't do this class together, right? This is the one you missed. So let's go back a little bit. This is 24. We didn't do 24, right?
No.
No, okay. So this is the start. Okay. So Sinsun and the line, right? So Sinsun contraction, the line, we refer to it as the cov, right? But we'll see how the Ramchal explains it. So it says be anayin ha mishket. Afilot lechotz mimenu ratza ha'insof. Okay, so in bringing about creation as a work outside of himself, right? I just explained that idea of this subdivision that was created through this Simsum, right? This subdivision of the Ein Sof, right? So he's referring to that subdivision as outside of himself, the self being the Ein Sof, right? But not the creator, right? The creator's not in this conversation. It's beyond imagination. This is only the Ratzon of the creator. Okay, so he says, bringing about creation as a work outside of himself, the Ein Sof, blessed be he, willfully set aside his limitlessness. Hear that? He set aside his limitlessness, this is infinity, and adopted a path of limited action. This is called the Simsum, right? So again, so we have the Ein Sof, we have the endless world, we have Hashem in this context of the endless world, and he says, hey, I'm going to break apart the endless world and I'm going to create a subdivision, and that subdivision is going to be called your reality. So this aspect of this subdivision is Hashem putting himself in a constriction because it's only a certain amount of lights in this world that we're living in, right? Only a certain amount of spherot. The Ein Sof has an endless amount of spherot, right? So we are in the frame of a limited amount. So this is a frame of constriction, and this is what he's saying about that, right? So we're going to go further. So he says, having discussed how to understand the spherot, we must now know that there were an innovate that they were that we know that they were an innovation, meaning the spherotes were the aspects of lights that were expressed from the Ein Sof. We must now learn how they developed afterwards. So he says, you have already heard in the viewing of the chariot, there are two factors, the vision and the expression. So he's saying, like, anytime there's a prophecy, and again, now this is an interesting point. We haven't heard him talk about prophecy in a few chapters now, since we started talking about the letters, right? He hasn't used that mechanism to describe anything. Now he's reverting back. And he's saying that the mechanism of prophecy, and he's a chariot, for example, he says the prophet sees and then he understands. Okay, he says, you already heard that the chariot, he's viewing the chariots, there are two factors, vision and explanation. Seeing and understanding, I will now proceed to explain the vision, since I have already set forth elsewhere the details, what is seen in the vision. You should now be able to understand them for what follows. So he brings two other sephers he wrote to get better explanation. You should now be able to understand them, for what follows is the explanation of details. In order to make things easier from the point onward, I will indicate how various aspects appear in the vision. So it has two parts, or three parts. Yeah, three parts. So he says part one is what? It bringing in about creation as a work outside of himself. This tells us where the Simsum took place, to what it applies, right? So he's going to explain the Simsum, and then the second part is the Ein Sof, blessed be he. He said this tells us what the Simsum was. This is crazy, bro. And he says part three is adopting a path of limited action. This tells us how the Simsum took place. Okay, so buckle up, buckle up, buckle up. Now, it's important to have in your kavana at this point of the learning that everything that we are hearing and witnessing in terms of the Simsum, the construction, everything, is only an expression of those 22 Hebrew letters, 22 channels of light that are expressed as letters, that form themselves into divine names, that describe that are all this lights that are supposed to be manifest in this reality. All have to come. They're all accumulate in the frame of Torah. The Torah is the basis of what we're reading the Simsum. The Simsum is going from the blueprint of the Torah, right? Everything we are witnessing, going to hear right now, is an expression of the Torah and Shemaim. The Simsum, the details of the functionality. This is all that. So he gave us the layout of what the mechanism, right? So we imagine a super stadium, right? The super stadium of people, in this case, a super stadium of lights. And some of these lights were given a manifestation point in this world that we're in today. In order for those lights that manifest, that lights that exist to come through this frame of manifestation, they have to go through 22 different categories. And we refer to those categories as letters. And then those categories that are letters form combinations. And those combinations of these lights that have to manifest form we call divine names. That's the Torah. So all the lights from the, do you hear this? All the lights that are coming from the Ein Sof that will manifest in this world are only make manifest through the Torah. Okay? All right. So he says part one. So he says, okay. So he says this part where in bringing about creation as a work outside of himself, the supreme will, which the Ein Sof, blessed be he, indicates different kinds of powers having no end limit. But we are not talking about this, his aspects of limitless. So we're not talking about that. The Ein Sof is limitless. We know that. He says, with which we have no connection. That aspect is beyond our logic. We're not even trying to figure out the depth of the Ein Sof. It's beyond. Rather, we're talking about a particular powers among his innumerable powers that is the cause of us, right? The aspects of the lights that were connected to this reality. The power that causes us is the power to bring about the work outside of himself, in a sense of creating and governing apparently separate and independent realms and beings. This he is in accordance with his quality of goodness. For the nature of goodness is to bestow goodness upon others. If so, we are talking about only his acts and his works and not about the eccentric aspects. Okay, so this is something that actually Rav Ashlag talks about a lot when he explains his Sfirot. We do not understand the depth of Keter, Chokhmah, Bina, or any of the Sfirot. But we do know how they play a role in the manifest reality that we live in. We understand kindness. We understand limitation. We understand beauty. We understand these things. But this process of the process of these lights that exist, the root of them is also connected to the endless world. Even though they're connected, this reality that we're in exclusively, and God's in a way putting himself or his ratzon in a frame of limitation, right? It's like you have a big bowl, you have a big, you have a big jug of mango juice, right? You have a big jug of mango juice, and then and then you and then you take some of that mango juice and you pour it in a cup. Now that mango juice is still the same mango juice that's in the jug, but now it's in a cup. It's in a different reality, right? You don't have, it's not the same amount. It's a limited amount. So this is the frame of constriction, right? That we're talking about. Hold on. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is his frame of it, but he's saying this aspect. Why does the mango juice? How can a mango juice? What is the mechanism of how the mango juice from the jar or from the jug gets into, or the barrel gets into the cup? How does it happen? How does it happen? How does it get there? It just vanishes from the jug into the cup? No, it has to be poured. So this frame of giving. Listen to what he says. He says the power that causes us, meaning this reality, is the power that brings us out of brings about a work outside of himself. Right? So this is the thing, right? So there's the Ein Sof, and it's outside of us. This is the other reality. And he says himself in the sense of creating, in the sense of he says the power that causes us is the power of bringing his work outside of himself in the sense of creating and governing apparently separate, independent realms and beings. We said it, right? You're clear already on this. This is what he's saying. And so he says, then he did in accordance with his quality of goodness, for the nature of goodness is to bestow goodness upon others. This is the pouring into the cup, the sharing, the hesed. So he's saying this mechanism that created this sub-mechanism comes from this frame of goodness. I'm using the analogy of a humongous jug of mango juice being poured in another cup. The other cup is it's the same mango juice, but it's in another realm. But the mechanism how it went from one place to another is through pouring. This pouring is what he's referring to as Hashem's goodness, right? Which is sharing. Okay, so let's keep going. And he said this. He said, and he did this according with the qualities of goodness, which is Hesed. For the nature of goodness, Hesed, is to bestow goodness, Hesed, upon others, sharing. If so, we're talking only about the transfer of the mango juice to the cup, but not the eccentric aspects of what makes the mango juice what it is. The fruits, the chemicals, all these things that make it what it is. We're not discussing that. That's what he's saying. Oh, the mean ha mitzotzim asmot yit amet lachach. So he says the truth of this is affirmed by the Simsun itself. For the Simsun took place only for the sake of creation, right? That's what the Simsun is. It's the reality we live in. Look around you. This is the Simsun. It's an aspect of separation of a particular light. It's only for you, and all these other people that are around you, right? He says, and for the truth is affirmed by the Parsufim itself, for the Parsufim, so for the Simsun itself. For the Simsun took place only for the sake of creation. If it had some other purpose, it would have had a different outcome. Hear that? If it had a different person, it would have had a different outcome. What's the outcome? Is the full correction of this whole world of Parsufim and to reconnect to the ultimate collective, right? Since we have no other outcome of the Simsum except creation, which is a true outcome, we must say that the Simsum was for the sake of creation. Further, his act of the Simsum prepared the way for creation to come into being in a way suited for the nature of the created realms and beings, which exist within the limits. So he's saying just the fact that the Simsum was created in this way, meaning the reality that you live in. He's just using a different word for reality. The reality you can see and you can't see, right? It's a subjugation of a particular set of lights, right? From the endless world. So he's saying, from that perspective, he's saying that when we analyze the world that we live in, look how these lights were nurtured by the air and water and animals and fruits and trees and all these different types of things. We have the ability to have other spouses and procreate and to create. All these things are expressions of light that bring us pleasure, that bring us manuka. So what does that mean? So it must mean that the dynamic itself of the world itself is clearly made for the people who live in it, right? I mean, clearly there could be parsufing, there could be a reality where, there could be parsufing, there could be a reality where, the earth is unlivable, right? Like you got other planets that we, according to science, we're not able to live on, right? And so the fact that we're able to live in a comfort is an expression of a set of lights. So if the Simsum was for the sake of creation, what was accomplished by all of the Ein Sof other powers? Bro, you hear these questions he's asking? He says, if the Simsum was created for us, what is the purpose of having all the other Ein Sof? Why not just create this constricted reality that is us? Why have this whole other thing above it? This is his question. It's unbelievable. I don't know what's going to happen right now. I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to see. He says, what is accomplished by all of the Ein Sof's other powers, with the exceptions of the particular powers that cause the creation, right? It is not for the sake of creation. If so, the Simsum took place only in that which for the sake of creation, namely the power to bring about creation in his works outside of himself. In other words, he's going to answer his question. In other words, among the limitless power that's in the Ein Sof, there's one power. Ah, the law that goodness bestows goodness, which is the power to create realms and beings and exist separately in separate entities outside of him. This is the power to affect. This is the power that affected by the Simsun. For initially his powers are limited, but he contracted, but he contracted in order to create a being that exists with him. So it's an interesting point. He's saying, like, in a way, he's saying that the whole Simsun itself shows Hashem's omnipresence over everything. Right? Because God forbid a person say, oh, well, the endless world is the endless world, and there's all these different, so you took that perspective. But what brings it back to God's sovereignty? It's the Simsun. The Simsun is there to show us that the Ein Sof is controlled by Rabboni Shalom, by the creator, of the master of the universe. Okay, so the power to affect by the Simsun, for initially his power was limitless, but he contracted it in order for the beings to exist within limits. Anayin ze be mar nira hamitsum or hatsitzum. Sorry, God, bro, come on, what's going on? Some days are me. Come on, he says, yeah, be makom achad. Okay, so correspondingly in the visions, the Simsun appears in one place, while all around it is Ein Sof, blessed be He. In other words, His power to create creatures among all of His other powers appear in one place. Oof. All around it are all of the powers, endless, without limits. His aspect of limitlessness is removed from one place only, and this is what is subject to constriction. Let's read that again. In other words, his power to create creatures among all of his other powers appeared in one place. Wow. Because the Ein Sof is just lights, it's parsufing. So he's saying the mechanism of creatures. Not only does it prove that God is omnipresent, he's the power ruling over all things, because he even created something even outside of his world of limitlessness. And he's taking a step further and saying that no, it's even more than that. He says even that. What does it mean? More than that, meaning that it's only in this realm of reality that created beings exist. Right. Okay. So wait, all right, yeah, let's keep going. Ratse ha ain't soft. Oh, let me see how many we got on this. Because you don't want to break these up. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. Okay. So it's only these two parts, and then I guess the third part is the next chapter. So let's stop here because I don't want to keep running. You know what I'm saying? This is it. Because the thing about it, not only is he giving us a blueprint, he's even giving you the questions your student's going to ask you, right? If you're saying this is reality, why did God have to create the Ein Sof? He could have easily just created this limited reality that we call, and that's it. And he gives us two amazing kasha. Let me, any thoughts, response, on what we learned?
Baruch Hashem. Um, it made me think about the Zim Zoom when you go into why Hashem used Elohim and creating, reality. When we go into
Mm,
Bereshit and see Elohim, that aspect of limitation
mm,
was used to create this world.
mm,
And it kind of is making sense to me a little bit, if I could say so.
mm,
Because even as Kazal says, when Hashem saw everything he created, it was Tov Mil, it was very good. And they said that's a Yesahara that he was saying was very good. That aspect of limitation, even with the Yesahara, has a limit, has an end. It's not eternal. This world is not eternal. The Yesahara has a set mechanism designed to elevate us. It's a part of our design in a way. As it brings out in Better Sheets 2:7, where you see the two U's in the world, the word for create, it's saying you have a Yesa Tov and Yesahara. It's kind of letting us know that this is only temporary, but it has a mechanism. And it makes me think about also when you look at Moshe Rabbeinu Aharon, Moshe Rabbeinu represented Nizak, Aharon represents Hod, but Hod was the spokesperson. You know, Aharon spoke for Moshe. The left spoke for the right. The left introduces the eternal. It introduces the chesed. Gevurah brings chesed. The limitation brings expansion. It brings eternal. So you have to go through limitation to become boundless in a way. And that's how I'm kind of seeing why Hashem created something separate from himself, which is himself. He created that limitation to allow us to go in that restriction that allows us to go into um, the promised land, if you want to use that. You know what I mean? You have to go through the wilderness, you have to go through the Bar Mitzvah, you have to go through that, and then you go into the promised land, then you go into expansion, then you go into Olam Haba. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I'm gaining from it. The left is a mechanism for the right, but there is no separation at all whatsoever. It's all a part of Hashem's unlimited powers. The limitation is the unlimitless part of it, which is insane to think about because we can't really grasp that in a way. And I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, no, I like that idea of the Elohim, Bereshit bara Elohim. I mean, that from that perspective, you could say like you could arguably say that when the Torah says bara, they're talking about the Ein Sof, and when they're saying Elohim, you could argue and say that that's a constriction. Bereshit bara Elohim.
Because translation would be He created. In the beginning, He created Elohim. He created the restriction,
Limitation.
limitation. He created the limitation with Elohim. I mean, that's kind of looking at it from a Kabbalistic lens.
It's nice. It's very nice. Key thing is we are becoming more clear, and this is when you're clear, the universe is with you. I'm witnessing it, bro. Like I mean, I'm seeing miracles happening in other people's lives around me, and myself, and I'm saying like, why am I in this reality? Why am I just saying things and they're manifesting? And not saying like they're manifesting the way I want them to, but things are manifesting. And it's not as much of a strain. And I believe it's because of the clarity that we're developing in our makshava, which coalesces to our body. I mean, the more you see how the world designs, you can't go around, you can't do low life things. I'm not saying we're even at that realm. We wouldn't even be studying this Torah if we were, but the point is just saying like, it's like, how can you sin? Bro, I told this girl the other day, I told her this morning, I went out and I just said to her, I was like, straight out, I was like, any guy who claims he's religious and he's willing to touch a woman that's in a state of nida, how can you trust him? Like, how can you trust that guy with your life? He doesn't even trust Hashem. If a guy doesn't fully trust Hashem, how are you gonna trust him with your life? Oh, he's reading Torah. He's really long payout, like his payout are really long. Get out of this all this cosmetics, bro. That's why I'm in Israel, bro. I see through all that. I see all that. Siddiqim are holding. And there's people who are knowledgeable about Torah. We live in a generation where it's a low level of Torah learning. As much as we have a lot of yeshivas and these types of things, even the yeshiva system focuses us people on skills on learning. You have to go outside of the system in a way to learn, right? Like the safer we learn, bro, they will never learn in yeshiva, bro. They'll never learn a safer like this. It's over. You teach the kids it's over. You can't control it. A kid who knows how to learn a Gemara and he gets involved in this type of thought, it's over. It's a wrap. How are you going to control him? So, anyways, point is, religious community got to figure it out. Our focus is removing pain and suffering from humanity. Obviously, as a Jew, that's our responsibility. But at the same time, I'm not, you know, out here trying to battle with people. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to like go to war over things that really don't have anything to do with me. Meaning that I didn't have anything to do with the development. However, but I believe you can create a safe space for people to come and spiritually connect to God. And that's like where my focus. And I think that's the idea of the Beis Hamikdash, right? That's the idea because we have to bring Mashiach. We have to bring a new consciousness into the world. All right, so we'll continue on. We're going to continue tomorrow with the Ein Sof, what's in memory. And it says, we'll just read a little bit just to get a little taste. He says, yeah, Ratzeh Ein Sof. So he says, it's already clear that the supreme will of himself is beyond all limitations. Accordingly, we do not think that he created only what he is able to create, and he has and he was unable to create anything more than this. So, a person shouldn't think this, right? Oh, with a limited this, blah blah. He's saying no. This is please, just don't think you're too smart. He is certainly capable of doing much more, and he did not want to do more. He acted not in his aspect of omnipresence and limitedness, but precisely the degree of power that he calculated to be perfectly subtle to accomplish the independent purpose of his action. Thus, we see that even through himself, he is without limitation. He sets aside his limitations in order to bring about creation. Wow, if that's not a mechanism for marriage. He says, thus we want to see that even though himself is without limits, right? That's men, right? We're without limits. He sets aside his limitation in order to bring about creation. Bro, that's marriage. That's Ha'arabi Kadeshi's Lee. I am excluding myself from this limited ability that, man, I have millions of sperm, right? And I'm going to constrict myself and I'm going to reveal my light in one specific place. Wow, listen here, bro. This is unbelievable. This is marriage. This is marriage. We're literally imitating how God created the physical reality when we bring a woman into our life as a wife. You got anything on that, Altino, Mr. Merryman?
Yeah, no, that's right on point. I mean, it makes me think, even the man takes on the Sephira of Chokmah, the woman takes on
Mm,
Bina. And it's
mm,
like the sages say, Chokmah is like lightning. It's a flash, the potential, but the
mm,
actuality is it has no limit in a way, right? But then the
mm.
woman, she's Bina, she's like the earth, she's nourished, you know what I mean? So you take the expansiveness of Chokmah and it's funneled and streamlined into Bina. And now you have that, and you have knowledge that's applicable. You can actually move within it. So yeah, even being married, you have so much potential, you have so much power, you have so much strength. But if you can't, channel that into your wife on whatever level she's on and
Exactly.
realize that that's the highest level, even though it
Yeah,
seems to you that you're taking a step back, in reality, you're not. You're elevating the vessel. Um, then now you're in the right modality, you're in the right stage. You can move forward. You can actually be conducive. You can be prosperous. You can be abundant through that limitation. What seems to be a limitation is actually your access to expensiveness. So that's one thing I have to see with my wife all the time. I'm like, oh, she's not here. She's not there. No, she's exactly where she needs to be. She's actually showing me where I need to be,
exactly.
and by pouring into, she's the vessel. I can be, you can be thirsty all day. You need water, but you have no vessel with me. You got all the water in the world, but you don't have nothing to drink out of it. So what does that mean? So that limitation is what you need. So Book Hashem, this is, like I said, Rob, this is super high level, but it's so practical in a way. It's easy to understand, and it can definitely be, it's fundamental for me. It's foundational for me for sure.
And the thing is, the more I'm learning the safer, it I really think you could really teach it in different parts. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? Like you could really break it into because the first part of the safer, it's connected to what we're doing now, right? It's connected to what we're doing now. However, the thing is saying that like it's still was in a different frame of reference, but you still needed to build off of the other. So it's just something to think about, like how to teach the safer, like on a bigger level. And also the thing I was thinking of launching, I'm sure what you think about this. I was thinking of launching a school for prophetess, like a school like for women who are very high spiritual souls, that ability to connect to prophecy, or they feel that they do, and utilizing specifically this safer to basically teach it to like female prophets that are just like around women that have those high spiritual gifts, because I'm meeting them. And, just learning, Tanakh and, Rashi and whoever, can only get you so far. Anyways, just so we're thinking about it. And I was thinking about calling the division Na'ava. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. So we'll end here, and God B'vat Hashem, we'll be back at normal time at 13. Does that work?
Dang,
Tomorrow?
is it because I know on Shabbos you have a lot
Oh,
going
that's
on?
right. Oh, Arab shop is
Yeah.
tomorrow. Okay, okay. Yeah, so we'll probably do like in the midday type of thing.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I
cool.
guess Shmuel do that. But B'vat Hashem,